Welcome into the Landon Tengwall Show and this week's weekly rundown of James Franklin's press conference. Hit that subscribe button if you are enjoying all of the content. No paywall, just Tengwall, and all of the content that you guys could dream of. All right, it wasn't a super really eventful one from James Franklin, but I think still some good things to take away from what he said for this fan base to kind of chew on leading up to Villanova. So Franklin first asked about the offensive line and the run game and kind of the lack of physicality that we have all seen. And he brought up a good point that I talked about in my post-game show, that very rarely nowadays is practice live. You are taking reps. Maybe guys takes 1/3 of the reps that they used to. So you're taking away a decent chunk of the reps there for the offensive line, and you don't feel as confident on those combo blocks. You don't feel as physical because you're not allowed to pancake guys in practice. You're not stay up off the ground. When you are doing thud rules is you kind of just hit the guy and then you stop. You're not to take him to the ground. You're not tackling anybody. So I think that could be something to keep an eye on as this season goes on. Could that physicality start to kind of rise up? It needs to. I hope it does. But that's something to be on the lookout for with the offensive line and any other questions about the run game and the physicality. I think you could point to that a little bit. And really, offensive lines, you would follow me on Twitter. I've been doing breakdowns of Clemson, Notre Dame, Alabama, all of them. Physicality is really being lacked across all of college football. And like I said, it's not special just to Penn State. So maybe it is. Maybe we're taking too many reps off of these offensive linemen. Look, I'm a fan of player safety, but you have to still be ready. You have to be physical. So something to keep an eye on there. Now, Franklin was asked about Nick Singleton, and he said, similar to Drew Aller, that Singleton very often was kind of just overthinking. And he's telling them, just go play. Just go play the game that you've played since you were 7 years old and be confident in yourself. And when you try to be too perfect, what it leads to is a lot of imperfection. It leads to you overthinking and then second guessing yourself, and you aren't able to play at that 100% speed because you're like, oh, am I right? Am I wrong? You just got to go. You just have to play football. And so he said, like I said, it said something similar to along those lines with Aller, that he's struggling a little bit with that next play mentality and letting those bad plays kind of linger around. And that's where they need to take that next step of, no matter if it's good, if it's bad, just continue on and put that behind you. You're going to watch it in film later, but you can't let that get in to your head. I think we saw that on the 3rd and 7 where Drew Aller, we played it a million times, missed Nick Singleton on that swing pass, and you see the frustration out of Drew, and he's pulling down his shoulder pads. Like, that's the type of stuff where I think you see it lingering in his body language, and he's got to get rid of that, because from a leadership standpoint, that's not good for your guys to see. If you do miss something like that, and it sucks to miss, and no one wants to hit that more than Drew Aller, but you got to clap your hands. All right, let's go. We got to get back to work, instead of, and pulling your stuff. When you are the leader of the team, third-year quarterback, you show emotion. That's great, but at times that can be kind of not great to act in certain manners when you are the leader of that squad. So that is something that they need to both continue to progress upon. Now, Franklin was also asked about the messaging after this game of basically like where we were at. We all know that we played Nevada and we played FIU, and we didn't play the best against either of them, and it wasn't dominant. We still sit at number 2 on the AP poll, but it still feels like a lot of the fan base has questions and reservations about, is this a national championship team? Franklin went on to say, I'll make sure that we appreciate the winning. Once again, if you follow me here, you've been watching, I told you about what he does every Sunday morning. He puts up all the teams that were favorites, that were upset, and basically says, hey, we could be one of these teams. So, could be a lot worse. He said that, there was also dogfights last week, that teams were not supposed to be in those type of dogfights. So he said sometimes maybe we are a little too close to it. We're a little too close to home, and we get too angry about it. I agree with that to a degree. Celebrate wins, and it was 34-0. We had a shutout. That's great. My problem isn't that we were in a dogfight necessarily. My problem was the missed assignments, but more so the lack of intensity, the not having fun. That's my biggest issue, that it doesn't look like the guys are going out there with a want to be straight up trained killers. And that's what we need. I mean, I'll tell you, 2022, the Rose Bowl team, where Jair Brown and Sean Clifford and PJ Mustipher, that would not fly. If it was flat and guys weren't bringing it, well, it was going to get talked about from the players. So I think that's where we need some leaders to step up vocally and light a fire under some of these seats in the last football building and say, hey, we got to raise the bar. We got to get up here and make this a season to remember, because we have the ability to do it. And that's why everybody's frustrated, fans, players, coaches alike, because we know the ability and the potential this team has. But through 2 games, obviously we're 1-0 2 different times, but we got to be better. We know we can't make those type of mistakes. Week 5 against Oregon, which, by the way, Oregon, it is going to be a top 5 matchup, maybe top 4. If we kind of continue on the path we are on, we're going to have a top 4 matchup, maybe a top 2 matchup in Columbus. You can't make those mistakes in those big games in a couple weeks. All right, Franklin also went on to say that we need to be more explosive and that we could have thrown it deeper a couple more times, which, once again, if you listen to the show, I said that on the post-game show yesterday, that the opportunity was there. They were playing almost press man coverage one-on-one with our wide receivers, and it's FIU DBs versus Penn State wide receivers. We should take that 5, 6, 7 times in a game. Let's get experience stretching the field. Let's get more explosive. Let's be exciting. Let's light a fire under the offense to give them a reason to want to be excited. And hell of a mention, Corey Geiger. We're in week 3, the start of week 3. We've had 2 Corey Geiger mentions from a James Franklin press conference. If you would have asked me preseason, I would have said it at 0.5 Corey Geiger mentions. We're at least 1.5. I would have said it there. I wouldn't said it at 2.5 Corey Geiger mentions. We already hit 2. I don't know. Let's see if we get to 3. Hopefully not. Hopefully we're chucking it deep and we're hitting on some of those. But I do want to talk about this, and this has been a big topic. He was asked, James Franklin, about those deep balls. T. Frank asked him about, hey, how you still teach the idea of leaving it up there kind of short and letting the wide receiver have to come back to it and maybe draw the DPI. And Franklin basically said, when you are one-on-one, everybody wants to be perfect on these deep balls. But if you aren't going to do that, you want to leave it short. He said we want to eliminate those overthrows and, leave an opportunity for the DB to come back or the wide receiver to come back and make a play. I don't like that. I'm just going to be frank. And look, we can disagree. It's completely fine. But you're limiting your big play ability by doing that. Because if you're telling Drew Aller, hey, pretty much leave it short, what's he going to do? He's going to leave it short. And so where is the possibility to hit these long balls? And I get it. James Franklin said if we throw 5 deep balls, there's a better opportunity to get a DPI on those. If we overthrow 2 or 3 of them, there's no opportunity to do anything. I get that, but we're talking risk reward here. Let's take a little more risk. And I think that is the biggest problem really of Drew Aller's game is he doesn't want to take any risk. And you see that he's got this great touchdown to INT ratio. And that's why I said before the season, I actually want to see Drew Aller have more interceptions this year than he's ever had. I know that sounds crazy. I don't actually necessarily want that. But what I mean by that is I want it to reflect in his game that he is taking calculated risk to make this offense more explosive. And that's the biggest problem. We're not explosive right now. And that is where you take the next step. So listen, like I said, we can agree to disagree. But if you have an elite quarterback that you feel is a top 5 quarterback in college football, you don't coach him to leave a ball short on a deep ball, especially when you have Devontae Ross who beat the cornerback. You leave that up there and let the wide receiver run under it and score an 80-yard touchdown. That's what you do. All right, last thing, Liam Clifford, blocking his butt off. He deserves a mention. No receptions yet this year. Probably will play a Julian Fleming type role for the offense this year. And I think Julian Fleming deserved a lot of credit last year for the blocking he did all season long. It's not easy to do that, but Liam Clifford's blocking his butt off, doing a great job. He's going to be valuable in that perimeter blocking as a wide receiver. So good on him there. But appreciate you guys tuning in. We will have I'm actually doing a Bryce Underwood, Michigan star freshman quarterback, film breakdown coming out on him. We're going to start doing some Big Ten breakdowns, working our way around college football a little bit. And then we will do 7:30 live call-in show. So I will see you guys tonight, 7:30 sharp. Bring all your questions. We're going to talk about all of this. Appreciate you guys. Like, comment, subscribe. Peace.